Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do a swatch comparison of Quinacridone Magenta. This is one of my favorite colors ever. Well, anything quinacridone I tend to love, but we're going to do specifically Quinacridone Magenta. Now I am, for this comparison, going with companies that have actually labeled their color as Quinacridone Magenta. So we're not going off the pigment number. And this again is just showing you the variations you can get. However, most of the companies featured today are using one, which is PR122, and a select few using PR202. PR202 is a lot less used amongst manufacturers. That said, Maimeri Blu has it, which I'm not surprised. Daniel Smith is one of the few that also use it, and then Schmincke. Predominantly, Quinacridone Magentas are PR122. Regardless, both are beautiful, but it'll be fun to see how different they are. And again, we're focusing on the name today, but just keeping in mind the pigments. I will also eventually be doing videos that break down just by pigment. So we'll grab just paints I have with PR122, because I do have quite a few PR122 that aren't called Quinacridone Magenta. So that's just another way to compare as well, so that you guys can learn the differences between a name versus a pigment and how they play a role. Real fast, if you're unfamiliar with PR202, because it isn't used as often, it does get confused with PR122 because, well, they're often used under the name Quinacridone Magenta. That said, PR122 is usually a lot lighter value, more intense, but it also is cooler than PR202. So just keep that in mind. The information regarding light fastness back in the day was a little shady at best, because a lot of manufacturers that did use PR202 at the time did not use ASTM for light fastness. However, since then, bigger companies have picked it up, like Daniel Smith, Maimeri Blu, Schmincke. Obviously, they're not going to mess around with that. And this is actually a very, PR202 specifically, is an excellent light fastness. So keep that in mind. And we're just going to start in order. Same as before, I will do a mass tone and then a wet on wet, just so we can check it out. So let me zoom you in. Okay, so we are starting with the Maimeri Blu Magenta Quinacridone. They like to switch it around. Luscious color. Okay. As always, I am just using a black velvet number 10 round. Now we're on to Rembrandt Rose Magenta Quinacridone, PR122 for this one. Beautiful color. Let me get a little bit more on there. But you can already see the difference between a 202 and a 122. Okay, so now we have Daniel Smith Quinacridone Magenta, another PR202, which I'm sure you can see the quick difference there. It's definitely a richer color, and in fact this one's even better, or richer I should say, than the Maimeri Blu so far, but never judge a paint till it dries. Okay, we are on the Holbein Quinacridone Magenta, which is also using just PR122. It's very bright. Get a little bit more up here. Gorgeous color though. Okay, Roman Szmal Quinacridone Magenta is also a PR122. Now most of these I actually already own, so only 2 of them will be coming off a dot card. Alright, Mijello Mission, which is Quinacridone Permanent Magenta. Check out the richness though, when that's just a PR122. Always fascinating. Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear the rain, but it is pouring down there. Okay, now we're on Winsor Newton Quinacridone Magenta. Hopefully there's enough left on my dot card. This is a PR122. Okay, lastly, the Schmincke, which is a PR202. I'm having to use the dot card, even though I know I have a tube somewhere. Okay. Beautiful. Alright, so what I'm going to do is let all of these dry, and then we can take a look at them. Alright, so here are the Quinacridone Magentas. What is that? 8 different brands. I think on the last comparison I had 7. So luckily with quinacridones I'll have quite a few. But these are really pretty. So you can totally see, and I probably should have put them next to each other, but hindsight 2020. The PR202s, see how rich and just luscious they are? That said, the PR122s are great, and look how different Mijello Mission's Quinacridone Permanent Magenta is compared to the other PR122s, even right next to it, including like the Rembrandt, the Winsor Newton. It's like, just look how luscious that is. Even wet on wet that thing is. Bright. I typically paint wet to dry, so you know I tend to always look more up top. However, you know, I'm a Roman Szmal gal for sure, but that's not my favorite Quinacridone Magenta. Instead, I actually really enjoy the Daniel Smith one, but I also really like Maimeri Blues. And you can just see the slight variations in them. I mean, you only get so much variation, obviously, when you're using the same pigment, but there's still other factors that play into the full color play out. The Holbein Quinacridone Magenta I actually like better also than Roman Szmal. Roman Szmal is just a little too bright pink, almost, especially when you compare it to these others. So I really I would have to say my favorites are the Mijello Mission one, Holbein's, Daniel Smith, Maimeri Blu. The Rembrandt one, I like it, but it kind of reminds me, you know, it's just a little too bright for my taste. I'm, of course, leaning mostly to the darker ones, but if I had to pick top 3, then we would say Maimeri Blu, Daniel Smith, and Mijello Mission, which is fun because this is the only one that's, you know, the outlier. It's PR122 as a, PR122, while the other are PR202. Daniel Smith makes gorgeous quinacridones. They, not just in magenta, but others. In fact, there is another Daniel Smith paint that uses PR202 as well, which is why it will be fun when we go doing comparisons of the actual pigment numbers, because you'll have 2 with the same pigment and you'll see the differences in the color there. But yeah, let me know if you own any of these Quinacridone Magentas. What's your favorite out of these ones here, or what's your favorite in general? I have ordered some dot cards for A Gallo, so I'll be able to start incorporating those into these little comparisons as well, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And of course, I would love to know any next colors you'd like to see. I've had a few requests for Prussian blue, so I think that's probably where I will go next, as well as, oh gosh, I can't remember, there was a yellow request. So leave your requests, comments, whatever, in down below, and then I will also leave links in the description to each of these paints and where I recommend buying them if you're here in the US. The best places I go, you know, obviously Jerry's is a pretty good place, Jerry's Artorama. However, a lot of my watercolors, I'm not going to lie, I purchase from Jackson's. They are in the UK, yet I get them at a better price, especially when they have their sales, than I would ever pay here in the US. So I will be linking some to Jackson's as well, just so you guys have an idea of where I purchase mine. Don't have to shop there, but at least it gets you started. So yeah, thank you guys, and until next time, take care. Bye now.